Well, hello again to everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Charles Nathan, your friendly guide helping you to navigate the shadowy swamp that is the modern British state. Now, with all the lurid coverage coming out of the Middle East right now, a lot of otherwise important stories are getting kind of pushed aside and swept under the carpet. There's nothing deliberate about this, of course, but it's up to us to make sure we don't take our eye off the ball and make sure that these important issues are getting at least some attention and some coverage. A good example of this was the recent meeting of the Environment and Climate Change Committee, which is looking into the increasing problem of illegal waste dumps. You may have seen them in the press. They're these huge, enormous waste tips that seem to appear from nowhere, and apparently no one seems to know anything about them, and everyone seems powerless to prevent them. Now, the committee has been looking into these for a while, so here's a useful summary of just how big this problem really is.
So let me start by saying that this follow-up session to our waste crime report was requested by the committee upon receipt of the government's response to our original report, which was deemed to be deeply disappointing. So right at the start of our inquiry, we heard that 20% of all waste produced in England is illegally managed. That amounts to a colossal 38 million tonnes every year, enough to fill Wembley Stadium 35 times over. We've also heard that there's a growing number of large-scale illegal waste sites being reported in the press. So, Mr. Duffy, could you tell me, is your current approach to tackling waste crime working?
Thanks very much, and thank you for having me today. It's really great to be here. And many of us in the Environment Agency were very pleased to see the focus you put on this issue in your report and the recommendations of your initial paper. Waste crime is obviously a very complex system in which the EA plays an important role. We're not the only actor in that system. You're focusing on us today quite properly, but we also need to talk about local government, the criminal justice system, many other parties that play a key role in here. And the short answer to the question about whether the system as a whole is working is no. A more considered answer would say that although the data is unreliable and waste crime is not necessarily new, there are areas that should give us cause for concern. I mean, firstly, for very good reasons, we've seen increases in landfill tax and also in the cost of getting materials recycled as the government puts forward its circular economy measures, in particular the packaging extended producer responsibility measures. That increases the opportunity for criminal arbitrage. And there is evidence that we've seen a number of organised crime gangs, at the more serious end of organised crime gangs, penetrating the UK waste sector. And we should come on in a second saying how we should deal with that. The debate is very wide-ranging. People talk about powers, they talk about staffing numbers. The thing I think is really missing from the discussion, both here at this committee and elsewhere, is the very important question of where is this waste coming from? You do not acquire 20,000 tonnes of trommeled household waste by going round a van in a housing estate or by picking up skips. You acquire that much waste through systematic penetration of the waste system. Because somebody, somewhere in that system, possibly holding a permit from the Environment Agency, gave you that waste. Either they knew you were going to dispose of it on a field, in which case, in my view, they are guilty of the same level of criminality as those who dumped it, or they didn't, in which case they are breaching their duty of care towards the waste sector. This is an extremely important point to make and an important shift of emphasis that is needed throughout this system.
Yeah, no kidding, that's an understatement. There's clearly a serious and systemic problem inside the legitimate waste industry, where massive amounts of this legitimate waste is being diverted and ending up in natural beauty spots. Until now, at least, the Environment Agency seems to have been completely incapable of anticipating or preventing this kind of illegal activity. And in fact, it seems to have been very weak in trying to prosecute and prevent it in the future. And it seems to have been unable to identify or track down the massive numbers of trucks and drivers and other people who must all be involved in this illegal activity. So let's hear some more details of what's going on there.
Then ask a follow-up question to that. You kindly sent us a letter this week.
Yeah.
Sent the chair a letter. And at Copy Wood, 666,000 tonnes of stuff has been dumped. how can that not have been stopped or investigated by the myriad of people that you've just kindly told us about? Because that's a huge amount of waste.
So as the chair said in her opening...
And there are two others, I might add, that are one over 500,000 and one just under 500,000. So that's a huge amount of waste. Forgetting about the tens of thousands, these are the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. So even with 347 field officers, we are not in every field, in every siding, in every motorway embankment, in every waste site all the time.
666,000 tonnes is not just happening.
By our own admission, Lord Ashcroft, by our own admission, with our data quoted by the chair in her opening comments, we have a very significant proportion of the UK waste flow that is diverted illegally, a great deal more than 600,000 tonnes. So we clearly have a broader societal problem. However, there is an issue here about at what point does the Environment Agency know about this offending? What are the flows of intelligence around it? That has been a really difficult issue for us with our local authority partners. Quite often, various factors. So the first one is making sure we have good quality assessed intelligence. So it's interesting you spoke to Kent. That's one of the areas of the country where we do have, I think, quite an effective intelligence relationship with local partners and the police. If you look across the whole of local government, though, quite often there are important bits of intelligence that are either not disseminated to us or not shared in the right way, and we lack intelligence sharing structures across local government.
Is that the part of the 10-point plan?
It is. It's a very important part of it.
Mr. Duffy, with all due respect, the question asked by Lord Ashcombe is a perfectly legitimate one, because although I referred to the huge scale nationwide of the issue, 38 million tonnes every year, if we'll be squatting flies all day if we try and deal with the generalities. We have to deal with the specifics, and it's perfectly legitimate for Lord Ashton to raise a specific site to say how can it get so big with no action from the Environment Agency.
I must have missed the specific site. I'm sorry, I apologise. Which site would you like me to address?
I was talking about Copy Wood, but there's one in Northwich and one in Cambourne, which are 400 and 560,000 tonnes respectively. That just doesn't. I mean, if you think of a grain silo, that's an awful lot of grain, and that just takes thousands of lorry loads to get there.
Okay.
Now, I think if Philip Duffy, the Chief Executive of the Environment Agency there, had made a real effort, he could have perhaps been slightly more smug and condescending in his response to what is, after all, a perfectly legitimate question concerning his area of responsibility, and the Chair was quite right to intervene and pull him up on that. So, there we have an example of the permanent bureaucracy not taking legitimate questions seriously and getting very defensive and indeed offended almost when people ask legitimate questions. So how are we actually going to bear down on this particular problem?
Where is the waste coming from? I mean, presumably you've got registered landfill sites. I understood that most of them were full, and that's part of the problem. You've got energy from waste sites, you've got recycling. Is it building waste? Is it contaminated waste? I mean, it's the criminal element, because you come to me and offer to take my building waste if I've had a repair done in the house, and I think you look a perfectly respectable person, but I don't ask where you're going to drop it.
Right, yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head there, right? So these very large sites like Kidlington, that is trommelled construction and household waste. Okay, that does not come from a skip. That came from a facility.
Could you describe further trommelled? Because I've been around a waste site at Harewood.
So your household waste, it'll go through a thing called transfer station and a material facility. It'll have its metal taken out because the metal is valuable. It may be taken for things like biodigesters. There'll be various waste streams taken off. But the residual is often ground up, trommelled into smaller pieces, possibly mixed with other forms of waste. And generally that will be heading for either incineration or for landfill. And there are costs, that is tax for landfill. It's gone up £126.50 a tonne. So at some point, somebody has paid a facility which has a permit to take on that waste and cover the cost of the tax and other issues, and somewhere someone has not done what they should have done, which is send it to recycling or incineration or whatever it might be. They have given it to criminals.
So how can you stop that happening?
So here's what I think we should do. Every time we have one of these sites, the first question is, where did the waste come from and who handled it? The next question is, and there are ways we can trace waste. We can do that. We can go. We have ANPR. We can look at where the cars and vehicles came from. There are things we could do. When we have suspicions, and I need to tell the committee we do have suspicions about a number of permitted sites, the next step is to audit those sites and say, well, look, how much came on site? How much went off site? Who did you pay to take this waste away? What did you pay them? How are you sure you've discharged your duty of care? What happens if they can't answer those questions? In my view, they should have their permits suspended, and if they can't answer them properly, revoked. That's what I think should happen.
In typical civil service fashion, the bureaucracy has immediately sprung into action and produced a bullet point action plan. I'm sure it kept a lot of people very busy looking at spreadsheets and putting together slide presentations, and I've no doubt it involved an awful lot of meetings. But what are the fruits of all this bureaucratic activity? Has anything actually happened, and can we look forward to seeing any action in the future? Well, here's a summary of where we are now, post-production of the action plan.
I have real concerns about prevention. You've highlighted, Philip Duffy, the importance of prevention. We have information, we have evidence from the ESA about the 10 to 15 permitted landfill sites that could possibly be the source of some of the rubbish that we see dumped in Hodeswood, Kidlington, etc., because there's obvious illegal activity going on those sites, as Baroness McIntosh highlighted, with queues of trucks waiting to go in and presumably similar numbers coming out. These trucks are coming from all over the country, and they're going back out all over the country, large movements. This is illegal activity on a massive scale in plain daylight. How is this allowed to carry on? Why can we not turn off the tap?
I think we're agreeing. I mean, I think this shift upstream to the permitted sites...
I hope you're not agreeing. I want to know why this has been going on, why this hasn't been tackled to date, and what is going to change with your 10-point plan. I can't see anything that's very different. You're just doubling down on what you say you already do.
No, I don't think that's true. I think we're doing a very radically different thing. I mean, I think there is a perfectly fair criticism, Chair, that the agency has failed to focus on permitted sites where the waste comes from. I think that is a very entirely fair comment, and I'm determined to change that. So if there is intelligence that there is a landfill who are sending lorries to be dumped in Kidlington, let's have it. And let's examine if that is true and whether we can take action on that site.
You have reports. You have the evidence of your own eyes. You have drones, surveillance.
I'm confused. I've spoken to the ESA. I'm confused. I don't believe that there are landfill sites that are taking waste out and taking them to illegal sites. There is illegal activity happening. I've spoken to ESA about this, so it's something we can perhaps clarify with them and feed back. There is illegal activity at landfill sites potentially related to misdescription of waste and landfill tax avoidance, but not the movement of waste from landfill sites, where our focus is in transfer stations, treatment sites, where that's where the waste is coming from and leaking out into the illegal part of the system. We are aware of ESA's concerns about a number of landfill sites, and we are actively engaged with those through the joint unit with the National Crime Agency, HMRC and others, to investigate what is happening at those sites. But that is different to the supply side for illegal waste sites, as I understand it.
Are the landfill sites full?
No, let's question them. I think there's a confusion here because the biggest form of criminality in waste is not illegal dumping. That is the subject we're discussing today. It's actually tax evasion. So that's putting waste in the proper place, under the proper environmental permits, but misdeclaring how much there was and not paying the taxes due. And this systematically undermines the business model of legitimate and well-run waste companies, many of which are ESA members. So I think that may be the point that's being referred to with this question of the... However, the point does remain that there are permitted sites. They're not landfills, they are different sorts of facility who are handling waste, and somewhere in that system they are diverting that into criminal hands.
Yes, and that is really important, and we haven't got to the bottom of where the shredded waste, and it's been processed in some way, shape or form, so that we can't identify easily where it's come from. Where is that waste coming from in the mass volumes that it's appearing in our countryside?
Chair,
That's a question we just haven't got to the bottom of.
Can I just clarify what you've just said? Is it your understanding that's coming from waste transfer stations?
and treatment sites,
Yeah.
yes.
So is there, I assume you're looking, is there specific measures you can do to try and monitor those sites more closely, to try and, as the chair put it, to cut off that supply,
so-
because obviously that prevention is better than cure and everything else. And
Yeah, no,
it's-
absolutely. I mean, on the specifics where we follow them up, so at some of the better known sites, the criminal investigation is following where that waste comes from using automatic number plate recognition and other intelligence to go back up. And we do know where some of this waste has come from. We are taking action against some of those sites. But again, that's chasing it back. That's after the event. What we need is things like carriers, brokers, dealers, the waste tracking system, so that we can know when it's leaking out of that legal system. That's the medium-term solution to this.
So maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel after all. The Environment Agency is now on record saying it's identified a number of potential offenders within the legitimate waste system and it's actively investigating. This is good news, in fact, because that's the only place these huge volumes of previously treated waste could possibly be coming from. There's no other source out there. Maybe the negative press, stinging criticism from this committee, criticism from ministers, and the general public more widely has finally galvanised the sluggish machine into action, and we'll start seeing some meaningful steps being taken going forward. One can only hope, and we'll keep an eye on things as they develop, because this story is going to run for a while. As always, please like, share, subscribe, comment, do all that cool stuff. It helps to keep small channels like this growing, and it helps to keep voices free and vibrant on the internet. Because always remember, our ignorance is their power. I'll see you all very soon. Bye bye for now.